Khalid Albaih, thank you very much for joining us on Viewpoint. Can I start by asking you to describe the situation in Sudan right now, a country that has been suffering terrible violence? The civilians are feeling the brunt of this fighting between the army and the paramilitary rapid support forces. There's been rape, sexual violence, kidnapping, starvation, incredibly food deprived in some areas. How would you describe where we're at now, some 600 days into this war?
Thank you for having me. Sudan is a very sad situation because, with all that you've said, uh, there's not enough support to Sudan, and there's not enough media coming out telling the world about Sudan, and this is an issue that we face because a friend of mine who just left Sudan a couple of months ago, he said it was more dangerous for him to have a camera than to have a gun, because once you have a camera, you are targeted, because the military or the Janjaweed, both of them, they don't want you to shoot what's going on, and they target you as some sort of a spy or something. And getting the news out there is essential for Sudanese people, because most people don't know what is actually going on. We don't have real source, trusted news that is happening. And I think this is the huge problem. And this is part, again, of why the world really doesn't know what to do with Sudan, because no one knows what is actually happening on the ground. And there's a lot of push and pull between the two. And of course, the Janjaweed are doing like unspeakable atrocities to civilians.
I mean, these are crimes that people are saying, and particularly many Sudanese complain that if it was happening anywhere else, it would be headline news. There would be statements of condemnation coming from presidents and prime ministers and all these places. But they are very disheartened and upset that this is the Sudanese that I've spoken to over the past year, that it's a story that's not getting enough media coverage. Of course, it's not safe for journalists on the ground, but there is still a lot that we could be doing to convey this information and to tell these stories, and it's just going ignored.
Yes, I mean, it's that was the thing, right? At the beginning, people were saying, "Oh, it's the forgotten war," and it's more like the ignored war, really. And it's really sad to see that you were ignored, and it makes you wonder: is this about racism? Is this about the general narrative about the region and about Africa? Because once you say Sudan, people expect to be okay. Of course, there's war, or of course there's famine, or of course there's. So it's this the general narrative about Sudan in the media has always been negative, and that really kind of puts governments or people or just into that situation. It's like, oh, we were wondering that this wasn't going on from the beginning. It's always like that, isn't it?
But that's such a disservice to the people in the country, right?
Absolutely.
Because actually you're talking about people who are extremely well educated, highly intelligent, very resourceful, an economy that should be absolutely booming. It can be a breadbasket for the region in terms of its agriculture and what it has to offer. But the tragedy is that in the midst of this fighting, that it has to be said, is being fueled by foreign powers and parties outside of the country as well, who've exploited certain divisions. This land is being destroyed.
This land is being destroyed. The culture is being destroyed. Our historical artifacts, humanities artifacts that are come from Sudan, are being sold on eBay, and this is a huge issue. And it shows you that there are people that are profiting from this war, just like people are profiting from just the whole region being seen as that.
Mm. And so tell me a little bit more about your work, because you are very active, not just in your artwork, but also with many activists, and there is such incredibly rich and vibrant civil society in Sudan, and I have spoken with many of these people, and the initiative they took, particularly in the early days of the war, in giving each other information about where are the safe roads and whereabouts you can find shelter and refuge, and avoiding certain checkpoints. I mean, it was amazing, and they really used the internet to their advantage in that sense. Tell me about your relationships and your connection with them, and then also how the role that art can play in telling these stories.
I mean, I'm not really playing a huge part in this because what the people on the ground are doing is absolutely heroic, and the community kitchens that were nominated for the Nobel Prize, they are literally just groups of people that live in one neighborhood that manage to feed hundreds of people in a place where they're starving for food, and they're surrounded by whether the army or whether the Janjaweed or whatever, and it's they've done an amazing job. So the least I could do is basically just tell the world what is happening in Sudan through my small platform. But the real heroes are definitely on the ground, and there are these people that are living under incredible, terrible situation on the ground. And art is a huge part of that as well, because you see artists that are still there, that are still trying to get young kids to do workshops for kids, to teach them art in refugee camps or even in displaced people.
Is this like a form of rehabilitation, or
and it just happens? Like I don't think they even think of it in a structured way.
Yeah.
They just think of it in a way that this is what should happen. We are here, these children are here, we are here, these walls are here.
But also, I mean, do you think this medium can put people in the shoes of Sudanese, these stories that we're talking about, in a different kind of way compared to reading a kind of academic NGO report?
And this is art. Art is about showing you the culture, but from our point of view. And art makes it closer, easier to talk to, easier to relate to. And the problem is that if you don't know, if you can't relate to the country, you can't relate to its people, it's just something that's foreign to you. And art makes it closer, culture makes it closer. And that's why, people would know more about other countries, and it will become a big deal because they know it. They feel a connection to it, But about Sudan, there wasn't always enough media coming out of Sudan. And that's why we're alien to them. People don't know what is actually going on in Sudan. They don't know what a Sudanese person is. They don't know that we have the most pyramids in the world. They don't know that the tops of our pyramids were gold. They don't know. There's a lot of history, the connection between Sudan and the region and the history, and how Sudan is an amazing diversity that we sadly couldn't manage. So if we managed to tell the people this, if we managed to tell the world this, if we managed to tell ourselves this, I think it would have been a totally different story. And that is culture, that is art. And that should go parallel with politics. It should go parallel with the policies and education and healthcare and so on, because it is as important.
But rather than going parallel, you're saying parallel to the politics, is it actually going to fill a vacuum in the absence of strong political leadership, or morally bankrupt leadership, or international systems that are in complete dysfunction, that no longer work, which were built in order to protect us? Is the future communities, civil society, generating their own initiatives and being proactive in order to stabilize a situation that is, just deep in war and conflict, and with no political solution in sight?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a coping mechanism as well, right? I mean, this is our only message to the world. It's like cavemen 6,000 years ago, or the hieroglyphics, or in the pyramids. It's really about telling our story from us,
So one final question to you, Khalid. What's one thing that we should, maybe on a more positive, maybe on a more positive note, because the conversation's been very heavy. One thing that we need to know, and there's many Sudanese people right here at the forum, and is there, in terms of qualities and characteristics, we're speaking about the people and the culture. What is one thing that the world should know about the Sudanese people?
We're very generous people. And we're known. I mean, a lot of people that visit us, they see a lot of beds. When you go to any Sudanese house, you'll see a lot of beds. And people are like, "Why do you have a lot of beds in the house?" We have a lot of beds because people want you to stay over, and we always have family coming over. We always have people. If you come to our house, you stay. You stay for food. You stay for. This is our culture. We're very open to people. We're very generous to people, and this is not something that we see as. It's just natural, right? So. Inshallah, when Sudan comes back, we'll have a sitting like this, and
inshallah, yes, I will. I look forward to having a meal at your
inshallah,
family home.
Inshallah.
Generous people, and you've been also very generous with your time. Khalid Albaih, thank you very much.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me.